Hey everyone, this is Peter with Tabletop Gaming Guild, and today we are going to look at the Midnight Legacy of Darkness campaign setting book for 5th edition, published by Edge Studio. Midnight Legacy of Darkness brings the world of Erdane to 5th edition. The world of Erdane was first introduced in 2003 when Fantasy Flight Games published Midnight. In 2005, the 2nd edition of Midnight was released, and now, almost 20 years later, Edge Studio has brought us the 3rd edition of the Midnight campaign setting. We've been given access to this PDF by Edge Studio, and we're going to utilize it to go through the world of Midnight a little bit. What is it like, as well as then some of the rules for the game, what it brings to 5th edition, and what 5th edition things it leaves out, because there are a few of those things. Where it differs from 5th edition, we're going to touch on some of those topics. We're not going to go through this entire book. It is a large book full of great information, and it's broken down into 3 parts, which we will see here when we get to the table of contents. So it's broken down into the opening bit, which gives you just a very quick introduction to the world and the history of Erdane. And then book 1 is Adventures in Midnight, and this is where the book is broken down for the players of the game. Here you have chapter 1, where you can learn about the races that are available for you to play as in Midnight Legacy of Darkness. You can play as one of the humans, dwarves, elves, gnomes, halflings, or orcs in the world. And then chapter 2 breaks down your heroic paths, and this is a very distinct class system that they have broken down for you. And by class system, I mean the classes that you can play as. So in the core game of 5th edition, there are barbarians and bards, sorcerers and warlocks, and everything in between. But in Midnight Legacy of Darkness, they've given you 12 new options to choose from your class, and they've got some very distinct feels to them, as well as then some feats and paths of feats that you can follow to grow your character as you campaign in this world. Chapter 3 talks about some of the core classes of 5th edition, and then the ones that are no longer available for you to play as here in Midnight Legacy of Darkness. Chapter 4 talks about some backgrounds and player options for the game, as well as Chapter 5 talks about adventuring in the world of Midnight. Now, the focus of this video is going to be on the first parts of Book 1, Adventures in Midnight, where we talked about the different races that you can choose from, but we're really going to focus a little bit more then on the classes to choose from and the heroic paths, because for the players, I feel like that's really where the core of the game sits, is choosing the hero that you want to be and the path that they will take. Now there are, like I said, 2 other books within this book here. Book 2 is The World of Midnight, which gets into the lore and some of the peoples of the world. The book tells you that Book 2 is for everyone to read, players and GMs alike. It's going to be information that most of the characters that you might play as would have. So good information for everyone to read. It's a lot. There's 100 pages there for you to read. It's a lot of information, and it might just be that you choose the area of the world that you're from and you want to read that bit so that you would know the bit of information that your person would know. So maybe not reading all 100 pages, but you can read the parts that your people would be from. So if you're playing a person from the northern Ireland, then you're going to be reading pages 131 to like 145. So not too much, but there's some great information for you to know there. We're not going to get into all of that though in this video. It is a good section though for you to read, again, once you have chosen where in the world your person is hailing from. Book 3, The Secrets of Midnight, is strictly for the GM to read and to utilize in the game itself. There's information about the Age of Shadow, the Servants of Shadow, and the Creatures of Midnight, also on running Midnight. So lots of great information here. We're going to focus on the opening bit here, and then also Book 1. And so the world in Shadow, let's talk a little bit about that. So we are going to see that Midnight Legacy of Darkness, as the title and the cover projects for us, is that this is a world covered in shadow and darkness. Peoples are subjugated here under the iron rule of a dark god, Isrador. Isrador was one of many gods in the beginning and eventually was cast down by the other gods. But in that casting down, he corrupted their magic, and the Sundering happened. The Sundering has now cut off the world from all other gods or extraplanar entities. And so now the world is being ruled by an evil god who subjugates all of the peoples of the world, using them for his own ends. And the players of the game are going to be heroes who are trying to bring a bit of light to this dark, dark world. Now, because of the sundering and the cutting off of other gods, that begins to show us how this game is going to be somewhat limiting as compared to normal 5th edition. It limits us by some of the classes that are not available from the core classes of 5th edition. Clerics are not available as a playable race, and warlocks are not playable, as well as monks. So clerics are not available to play because the only god here is the evil god Isrador, and all clerics would be serving him, and that would not make itself available to a heroic character. So no clerics are playable. Warlocks, kind of the same idea, where there's just no other creatures of a significant power that a warlock would draw their power from, or make a deal with to draw their power from. And then monks, they state specifically, are just not available. The key point system is not something that they utilize here in this game. And so if you read the first little bit of this book, A World in Shadow, you will hear the history of the world and of the fall of Isrador, of the fighting in the centuries and millennia of war that took place between his fall and his final beginning of his subjugation of the world, because there was fighting that took place as he slowly took over the world and peoples fell to his rule. So you would get that in The World as It Was. And then as you continue to read, you will see the state that the world is now in. As people have been surrounded, there are the elves of the world who mostly live in their forest, and they're just completely surrounded. You have the dwarves of the world, who the majority of which live in their mountain halls, but are slowly being slaughtered by the people who follow the shadow, as they continue to make runs into these dwarven halls, trying to root out the dwarves, and the dwarves are continuing to fight, and it's just a slaughterhouse down there. So a lot of really good world building here in the opening of the book. There's a little bit more of the explaining of what the sundering is and how that has cut peoples off from the other gods and their powers. And then we get into magic here in Midnight. So magic in this world, it's a lower magic system, not because magic isn't available, but it's because magic is seen by Isrador as the only power that could possibly overthrow him at some point. And so he is very diligent in taking out anyone who does not work for him who could use magic. And so if you were to choose a class that gives you the ability to utilize magic, you then have to know that you can be scented out. There are creatures whose job it is to smell out those who use magic, so that they can be tracked down, they can be killed, or used and brought over to the side of the shadow. Also, magic items are not something that you're just going to be able to walk into a store and buy. They're much more rare than that. And so if you were to find a magic item, it's going to be kind of a big thing. if you were to happen to do that in this game. So there's some information here about the villains of Midnight beyond just obviously the shadow itself. There are the Night Kings that you can read about. There are witch takers as well. So all sorts of things here for the shadow, ready to take out the heroes of the game. So there's this section here on the history of Erdane, which you can read about. It tells you a little bit about the First Age, the Second Age, and the Third Age, and it's at the end of the Third Age where Isrador finally gains victory, and we are now, the present world is in what is known as the Last Age, which is where the heroes will be playing. All peoples have been subjugated, and now the darkness is full force. So that is how you could read, I guess, that beginning bit there, just to get the history of the world so that everybody knows what has happened and where we are now. So the next part of the book, Adventures in Midnight, like I said, is really for the players, and it's where the rest of this video is going to focus. And that is because this is where we can find out kind of the feel of the setting for the players themselves. Again, this book and this game is meant to be focused on characters that are heroes. I know that in a lot of 5th edition games, people like to play morally ambiguous characters, which can be interesting as well. But I think at the heart of Midnight Legacy of Darkness is the idea that you will be playing a character who does have to make difficult decisions, but you're somebody who is bringing light to a dark world. You are going to be a hero, and the whole mechanic of the heroic paths is going to focus on that in Chapter 2. Now, Races of Midnight, you don't have a ton of choices like you do in 5th edition, where it constantly grows with all the different ancestries to choose from. Specifically, in this game, you can choose to be a human, and you can choose which type of human you would like to be, which area of the world you're from. There are 3 different areas that you can choose from, and when you do, you will get your traits, and then you will get some extra traits from which area of the world you're from. When it comes to the dwarves, you have a couple of options. You can choose to play as one of the clan dwarves. These would be the dwarves that still live in their halls, who are putting up a fight down under the mountains. Or you can choose to be one of the Kurgan, which would be one of the dwarves who live on the surface, still in some of their small villages there. Choosing between those two will also, again, give you some extra information for your character, different ability score increases and stuff like that. There are also then the elves, and for the elves, you again have choices as to where in the world your elves are from, and there are 4 different types of elves to choose from. And then there are also the gnomes. Now, the gnomes are pretty interesting because it specifically here mentions that the gnomes are kind of a traveling folk, they're merchants, and because of that fact, they are still being utilized by the shadow, and a lot of the peoples see them as betrayers. They're working for the shadow, they're helping the enemy get from point A to point B, or they're delivering weapons for them. But specifically here they talk about that there are a lot of spies within the gnomes. There are people who are working, it's like they're working for the bad guys, but they're also working for the good guys in secret. And so you can still play as a gnome, somebody who is quietly trying to subvert the shadow. And then there are the halflings, and the halflings were very quickly subjugated again by the shadow, and so you have to choose from the halflings whether you are one who was captured and put into slavery, or if you are still one of the free halflings who is part of a nomadic tribal people. And so you can choose, like I said, the enslaved halfling or the nomadic halfling. And then you have the orcs. Now, the orcs are mostly known as working for, again, the Dark Lord Isrador. But this is, again, one of the player options that you can choose, one of the races that you can choose, that maybe you have seen the error of your ways, or of the error of your people's ways, and you see that even though supposedly you work for the Shadow, you're really just another group that is subjugated, and you're trying to help them see the light to change things. And so you can choose to play as an orc. So each one of those races has their few pages of information, the lore of their people, the traits and abilities that they will give your player character. Now that's chapter 1, and you do have, like I said, only 6 options there, not quite as many options as you would normally have in 5th edition. Now, opposite of that is the heroic paths. There are so many options for the players when it comes to heroic paths. So chapter 2 with the heroic paths is where I think Midnight Legacy of Darkness really shines. Midnight Legacy of Darkness, this is not the first world or campaign setting to be a dark setting or a gritty setting or a low magic setting. But the heroic paths is a really, really cool idea that I like quite a bit. I like the idea of it. And this is where you're going to choose from 12 different options, 12 different class options that are very specifically designed for a very specific style of character or hero. And as you play your character with these classes, there are feats that you will gain periodically that will grow that very specific style of hero. And so we're going to take a look at these classes, and there are 12 of them. This is a very meaty system. It's very cool, lots of great options for the players, but again, a very specific design. You know, there are lots of different types of paladins out there. There are lots of different types of barbarians out there. A lot of, you have those subclasses. Well, instead of subclasses like regular 5th edition, you're going to have these very specific heroic paths to possibly follow. Now, you don't have to use this system. It's not required when playing this game, but I honestly think that this is where the game shines. And so if I were going to be playing this game or running this game, I think I would ask my players to really probably lean into utilizing this system here in Chapter 2, because I think it's kind of the heart of this game. So with that, we're going to dive into Chapter 2, and we're going to talk about each of these different options that you will have as a player in Midnight Legacy of Darkness. So to give you a feel for each of these classes, we're going to go ahead and read the little bit of flavor text given for them so that you can kind of get a feel for them. But then also just know that each of these classes have these very specific feats that you will gain as you play them, delivering more and more on this idea that we're going to be given here with this flavor text. So let's go ahead and start with the Avenger. The battle against Isrador is lost, the forces of the light broken and scattered, but there are still those who refuse to let the war die and who pursue their dreams of vengeance no matter the odds. They are as likely to be enslaved halflings and old ailing servants as they are to be powerful warriors. They know they may never again face Isrador's troops on the field of battle, but they have learned to strike from the shadows and take their victories where they may. These hidden killers, sworn to battle the shadow to their dying breath, probably account for as many dead soldiers of the enemy as any free rider or dwarven tunnel fighter. To be an Avenger, one must be dedicated to stymieing the shadow at every turn and through any available means. Many Avengers are more spies than assassins, gathering information about their oppressors and dispatching it to the remaining bands who fight against the shadow. They know that one accurate report can lead to the death of more of Isrador's minions than they could ever hope to kill alone. Other Avengers prefer more direct means of retribution. Many legates have been found dead in their beds, a grim reminder that as long as at least one Avenger lives, no minion of the shadow can consider themselves truly safe. So you have these Avengers, these, like, you know, again, you think of an avenging spirit, but these are Avengers who are going after the shadow from, again, from their own shadows as spies and or possibly even assassins. And you have these feats that as you follow them, you will see how it leans into this very specific type of hero. So there's the lurk feat, and then silencing strike, study the target, deadly strike, and unseen lurker. And you will gain those feats at different levels as you play this very specific style of hero. And I like that. I think it's very interesting, a very interesting way to play this game. And it's very different from 5th edition, where there are feats available to players, but it's kind of very random which ones they may or may not choose. Here, everything is very focused on building a specific style of hero, and you choose that at the beginning with your class. So the next one is Beastborn. Whereas some heroic paths allow characters to communicate with animals, the beast has simply become one. Long years of suffering under the yoke of the Night Kings and their foul minions have taken the last shred of civilization from the Beastborn, forcing them to revert to a more primal state to cope with the loss and pain that surround them. By living on instinct alone, the Beastborn is better able to control their surroundings and survive in the harsh world that Isrador has created. The Beastborn lives by only one code: kill or be killed. They are loyal to those they trust and dangerous to those they do not. And once they set themselves loose on an enemy, there can be only one conclusion to the conflict. And they have the feats of Wild Resilience, Vicious Assault, Pack Alpha, Wild Sense, and Apex Predator. So again, even just the names of these feats are very evocative for the class. Believer. Even though the gods have been lost to Aerith for thousands of years, the faith of mortals dies hard. The faithful hero knows that once the gods did bless their world, and they believe that someday these deities will return to herald a new age. The power of their faith inspires the faithful and those around them to great deeds, protects them from harm, and frightens their foes with their convictions. The believer rarely preaches what they believe, for they know how absurd it sounds in a world abandoned by the gods so long ago. Still, others cannot deny the power the believer wields. And they have the feat Inspiring Faith, Courage of your convictions, Bulwark of faith, Holy terror, and Strength of faith. The Channeler. Magic is a rare and powerful force in Erdane, and mortals who can wield it are rarer still. Most arcane spellcasters of any accomplishment perished or were corrupted at the end of the Third Age. In the aftermath of the war, there are precious few teachers and mentors who can pass along their lore to a new generation. Those who manage to learn the craft of magic on their own are inevitably hunted down and exterminated by the legates, the only ones who wield true divine magic. People who know and can cast a few useful spells are not completely unknown in Erdane. There are still some wizards, druids, and other magic users in the world, even if they are limited to the few remaining free realms or must try to hide their abilities. However, there are those who dare to truly devote themselves to the art of magic and expand their connections to the magical eruptions of power that dot the surface of Aerith. These rare few are known as channelers. Channelers lead lives of great risk and danger. Their innate power and potential mark them as threats to the Night Kings and their dominion. They are hunted by the fallen gods' priests, the legates, as though the legates can smell magic on their prey. Because of these dangers and the superstitions of common folk, channelers often seek secluded places to pursue their studies, experiments, and meditations in isolation. When they venture out, they often quest for rare items of power, lost knowledge, or vengeance against those who persecute their kind. Their feats are channeled magic, masterful focus, mind within the weave, the eye opens, and the channeling. Next we have the Dragon-Blooded. Dragons, often associated with the purest of magical energies, were once a more common sight on Aerith. It is even said that they sometimes took on different forms and intermingled with other species, Perhaps it is from the results of these unions that the dragon-blooded heroes of Aerith are descended. The dragon-blooded have a natural feel for magic and the arcane energies that flow through the world. They are often hot-tempered and quick to anger, and the power they radiate makes them among the most sought after by Isridor's witch-takers. The dragon-blooded have the feats of Conduit, Pure Magic, Intimidating Presence, Fireheart, and Raging Fury. Earth-blooded. The Earth-blooded have a powerful link to Aerith, and specifically to the web of magics that flow through and around it. Though they may not have a magical affinity themselves, they can still draw strength from that energy. The Earth-blooded tend to see themselves as protectors of the world they inhabit, particularly the power nexuses that dot Aerith's surface. Most will hear the call of a power nexus at some point in their life and feel compelled to protect it from those who would drain it of its magical energies. However, the Earth-blooded instinctually feel that the black mirrors of Isridor are antithesis to the power of Aerith. Any Earth-blooded can feel these mirrors stain on the soul of the world. Any effort an Earth-blooded makes to remove a black mirror's foul taint may drive them into a nearly mindless fury. They have the feats One with the Earth, Nexus Affinity, Avatar of Aerith, Rooted, Nexus Guardian. Then we have the Guardian. The hero born to the Guardian's path finds value in serving others. This often manifests as a loyal bond to an individual or group, or as a fierce devotion to a cause or ideology deemed righteous by the Guardian and those they respect and trust. Not only does a Guardian train to fight shoulder to shoulder with their allies, but they also seek out ways to further the fight against Isridor and the Night Kings. Sometimes this even involves leading allies in resistance, although to a Guardian this is simply one more act of service. And they have the feat Guard, Crucial Strike, Tactical Direction, Warding Presence, and for Victory. Then we have the Ironborn. The Ironborn can withstand the blows of the mightiest creatures, fight on even while punctured by many black-fletched arrows, and resist the harshest conditions and most potent venoms. The Ironborn can single-handedly turn the tide of a battle and rout vastly superior forces simply by refusing to fall. Whether this almost unnatural resilience comes their own internal fortitude or some external factor depends on the individual in question. Some Ironborn may be gifted with an ancestry that leaves them tougher than most, while others may have been imbued with a power from one of the fallen or even the world around them, and some may simply be too tough or too stubborn to die. Whatever the cause of their resilience, Ironborn characters tend to be loners, privately battling the pain of 1,000 wounds, both physical and mental. They make loyal allies, however, and those who come to know them respect them a great deal. So we have the feats Hard to Kill, Tough as Iron, Indefatigable, Quick Recovery, and Unbroken. Then we have the Preserver. In the age of unending war, there are still a few good-hearted souls who adhere to the ideal of saving lives instead of taking them. Some of these individuals focus their attentions on healing the sick and injured or caring for the huddled masses trapped under the oppressive rule of the Shadow. Others join the fight directly, administering to wounded warriors on the battlefield and getting them patched up and back in the fight as quickly as possible. Preservers are experts at making do with the resources at hand and know all manner of herbal remedies and folk medicines. They are also all too familiar with the Fell, and in the course of their work, many have developed skills to return the dead to the grave as quickly as possible. Though many warriors may mock a preserver for practicing the healing arts, woe be to those who threaten the preserver's charges. And they have the feat Folk Medicine, Resourceful, Skilled Healer, Acts of Service, and Reassuring Presence. Then there's the Speaker. Air's common folk do not dare to rise up against the rule of the Night Kings lest their families and homes be destroyed. Occasionally, a hero comes along, however, who is charismatic enough to convince even the most reticent to aid those who fight against the Shadow. Such heroes often leave pockets of rebellion, inspiring others through their words and deeds and using their charm and power of personality to aid those in need. With their ability to manipulate others may be powerful, while their ability to manipulate others may be powerful, it is far more often the simple sense of hope they bring with them that is their greatest weapon. And they have the feats well-spoken, crowd rouser, rallying cry, scathing rebuke, changed to the core. There's the Sunderborn. When the Sundering closed the world of Aerith off from the other planes of existence, many beings from those planes were trapped on the world. Even now, thousands of years later, creatures from other planes roam the world in search of a way home. Over the centuries, some of them formed relationships with mortals from this world, leading to the blood of outsiders being found in some rare lineages. When combined with the power of heroes, this link grants a character unique abilities. Sunderborn characters are caught between two worlds. Their personalities often seem scattered or confusing to those who do not know them well. They are as comfortable around outsiders as they are around mortals, and they relish any chance to interact or communicate with others of their kind. And the Sunderborn have the feats Fallen Sense, Sundered Blood, Sundered Fury, Ethereal Presence, and Sundered Form. And then we have the Wild-Blooded. A rare hero of Aerith is born with a connection to the natural world that goes beyond a simple affinity for nature. They understand how all the plants, animals, and weather of the world interact with one another and with the other creatures of Aerith. This hero has abilities that help them interact with nature and allow them to call upon its help in times of need. They often look for like-minded companions with whom they can work to turn back the shadow before he utterly befouls the world with his evil taint. One element that sets these heroes apart is the bond they possess with animals, and often with one animal in particular. The Wogren riders of the Halflings are one example, though not the only one. Some of the best Sarkosan horse riders are likely wild-blooded as well. And they have the feats Natural Bond, Wild Companion, Pack Fighter, Friends Until the End, and the Wild Hunt. And here on the next couple of pages, we see again a synopsis of the class, the heroic path that they follow, with the name of each of their feats. So again, it's a lot of information to take in. It's a lot of things to possibly choose from. There are, again, 12 of these classes, these heroic paths. But I think this is, again, where Midnight Legacy of Darkness shines. If you're going to play this game, it would probably be my recommendation. It would be my recommendation to choose one of these and try to see it through. Now, obviously, if you're going to see one of these heroic paths all the way through, that's going to be a lot of gameplay, because you will be getting these feats intermittently as you play all the way up to 16th level, which is very high level play when it comes to 5th edition, depending on how your GM decides to level everybody, how quickly you're going to level throughout your campaign. But with these specific classes being tied into the world of Midnight Legacy of Darkness, this would definitely be the option I would take as a player or as a GM when playing this game. With that being said, you still have the option of playing against some of those core classes. You could still play as a barbarian or a bard. You cannot play as a cleric, being as, again, Isrador is the only god and he is an evil god. So there's no other gods for your clerics to gain their power from. You could be a druid or a fighter. There are no monks in this game. You could be a paladin, where instead of drawing your power from your faith or a deity, you now draw your power from your convictions. You could play as a ranger. You could play as a rogue. And again, they specifically mentioned there are lots of rogues in this world. You could play as a sorcerer or even a wizard. But warlocks are also not available in this game, as there are no entities for the warlocks to pledge themselves to. So that takes us through the main chapters that I wanted to focus on in this video, because it's where the main information lies for the players. And I think, for me anyways, it's where the heart of this campaign setting lies, because we see that we are playing a game that is a dark world. There is an evil god who is ruling and subjugating the people here, making their lives miserable. And your characters are going to be the heroes who are going to bring light to this dark world. You have all of these 12 really great class options with their heroic paths. And so if it were me, that's what I would lean into in this game if I were going to run it. I would lean into these heroic paths and really sell them to my players. Now, book 2, like I said earlier, is the World of Midnight. You can read these different parts depending on where you choose your character is hailing from in the world. So you're going to read some information there so that you would have the information that anyone from your area of the world would have. And then the rest of the book, book 3, The Secrets of Midnight, is for the GM, and this is going to give them the information they need about the Shadow and the servants of the Shadow, as well as the creatures, the monsters that they will be running and playing against their players. So everybody, that is Midnight Legacy of Darkness. I think this is a really interesting setting. I like low magic settings. Though this isn't quite as a low magic setting as some that I have played in, because magic is still definitely a viable option here. It's just very, very dangerous to be someone who wields it. And I love the heroic paths. I think it's a great idea. I think that is what makes this game stand apart from normal 5th edition, where there's a lot of options for players with 5th edition to really kind of mix multi-class, mix feats together, don't take feats at all sorts of different things that they can do, where here, even though those options are still available, it's not where the book has its heart. The heart of this book and this setting is definitely the heroic paths. It's why there's a whole chapter set aside for it, and I can't recommend that enough if that's what if you're going to be playing this game. So thank you for listening to me talk a little bit about Midnight Legacy of Darkness, again by Edge Studio, and it's for 5th edition. So you're going to need this PDF as well as the core rule books for 5th edition, because there's a lot of things available in there that you're going to need to see to pull into this game. If you do not have the core rulebooks for 5th edition, you can also go onto the internet and you can search for the the free basic rules for 5th edition, and that would be enough to get you playing. You don't have to go out and buy the player's handbook, the monsters manual, and the Dungeon Master's Guide if you don't want to. You can just Google the basic rules for 5th edition, utilize that PDF, which is over 100 pages long, as well as this PDF or the book if you get the physical book, and you can be playing Midnight Legacy of Darkness as easy as that. So again, thank you everybody for watching. I hope that I gave you at least an idea of what this setting is all about, and maybe got your attention with the heroic paths. And if I did, you can head on over to Edge Studio's website and buy a copy of this PDF today. Thank you everybody for watching, and until we talk again, keep on playing games.